6 minutes ago, Iran hits Israel's secret airbase and hits USA secret agent team. Two things happened last night that the people running your country do not want you to know about yet. Two things that, taken together, mean the world you wake up to tomorrow is already different from the world you went to sleep in. The first thing, Iran struck a military installation that officially does not exist. An airbase in Israel so classified that its coordinates appear on no public map, its personnel appear on no public roster, and its mission has never been acknowledged by any Israeli government official in any public forum. It was hit. The second thing, a team of American intelligence operatives working covertly in the region, people with no official cover remaining, people running the kind of operations that governments deny until forced by undeniable evidence to acknowledge, went dark. All of them simultaneously. My name is Professor Jiang, and what I am about to show you in the next 24 minutes is not speculation. It is the architecture of a war that most people will not understand until it is already upon them. Before I go deeper, I have one gift for you. People ask me every day, Professor Jiang, what is real anymore? Because the internet is full of fake success, fake gurus, fake promises. But after 32 years studying money, power, and human behavior, I discovered something dangerous. Most people are not poor because they lack opportunity. They are poor because they are mentally programmed to stay average. That programming controls your decisions, your risks, your income, your entire future. That is exactly why the TPP system was created. Inside, you receive mindset mastery training, advanced wealth strategies, investment fundamentals, a private mastermind community, and a complete success roadmap with instant access to premium video lessons and ebooks. This is not motivation. This is financial reengineering. And here's why thousands join with confidence. You receive a full 60-day money-back guarantee. Use the system for 2 full months. If your mindset and financial clarity do not transform, you pay absolutely nothing. Zero risk. Complete protection. The investment is $5,399 one time. One decision can change your financial trajectory forever. Don't worry. I already placed the link in the description and pinned comment. This is Professor Jiang. Authentic. Calculated. Guaranteed. Secure your position now. Now let's get back to what matters. Let me start with the airbase. Because understanding what was hit requires understanding why it existed. Israel has maintained a network of classified military installations for over 4 decades that serve a specific strategic purpose. These installations are not conventional air bases. They are what military planners call forward staging platforms. Their purpose is not routine air operations. Their purpose is to position aircraft, munitions, refueling infrastructure, and intelligence assets close enough to high-priority targets to execute rapid precision strikes with minimal warning time. In simple terms, these are the bases from which Israel would launch an attack on Iran. They are the arrow pointed at the heart of Iran's nuclear program. And last night, Iran shot the arrow. Before Israel could use it, let me explain how Iran knew where this base was, because that answer reveals something deeply unsettling about the current intelligence landscape. For years, Israel's classified military infrastructure has been protected by a combination of geographic concealment, electronic counter-surveillance, and what Israeli intelligence calls strategic ambiguity, the deliberate policy of never confirming or denying the existence of specific capabilities or locations. It has worked extraordinarily well for decades. So how did Iran find this installation? The answer has 3 components, and each one is more alarming than the last. First, satellite surveillance. Iran has significantly upgraded its indigenous satellite capability over the past 5 years. Working in partnership with Russia and with access to commercial satellite imagery from multiple international sources, Iranian intelligence has been conducting systematic high-resolution mapping of Israeli territory. Not just the territory Israel shows the world, all of it, including the areas marked on Israeli maps as restricted zones that appear as blank spaces on civilian mapping applications. Those blank spaces are not invisible from orbit, and Iran spent years filling in what the blanks were hiding. Second, human intelligence. This is the part that will disturb you most. Iran's intelligence service, known as 𝐉𝐻, has conducted one of the most patient and sophisticated long-term intelligence penetration operations in modern history. Not by recruiting Israeli military officers, which is extraordinarily difficult, but by targeting the supply chain, the contractors, the engineers, the logistics companies, the equipment suppliers, anyone who touches the physical infrastructure of Israel's classified military network without having the security clearances that would put them under intense counterintelligence scrutiny. A man who delivers specialized electrical components to a classified facility knows where that facility is. He may not know what it does, but he knows where it is. And in intelligence work, location is often the first and most critical piece of information. Third, electronic signature analysis. Every military installation, no matter how classified, generates an electronic signature. Communications, power consumption patterns, electromagnetic emissions from radar and aircraft systems, data traffic patterns, all of it creates a fingerprint that sophisticated signals intelligence can detect and analyze. Iran, with significant technical assistance from Russia and its own rapidly developing signals intelligence capability, has spent years collecting and analyzing these fingerprints. Cross-referenced with satellite imagery and human intelligence reporting, the picture becomes clear. Not instantly, but over years of patient collection. Patient collection is Iran's greatest strategic asset. They play a long game. They have played it for 4 decades. And last night, they cashed in years of accumulated intelligence. Now, let me describe what the strike itself looked like, because the technical execution tells you something critical about Iran's current military capability. Iran did not use a single weapon system. They used 3 simultaneously. The opening salvo was a swarm of kamikaze drones, not the primitive devices Iran used in earlier operations. These were Shahed series drones, significantly upgraded from the variants Iran supplied to Russia for operations in Ukraine. The upgrade that matters most is the navigation system. Earlier Iranian drones relied heavily on GPS guidance, which can be jammed. The upgraded variants use a combination of inertial navigation, terrain-following algorithms, and infrared terminal guidance that makes them resistant to the electronic countermeasures Israel has developed specifically to defeat Iranian drone attacks. These drones flew at low altitude, below the engagement envelope of Israel's primary air defense radars, using terrain masking to minimize their radar signature. The second element was a salvo of ballistic missiles. But here is the critical detail. The missiles were not aimed at the same targets as the drones. They were aimed at Israel's air defense systems, protecting the area around the classified installation. The strategic logic is elegant in a deeply troubling way. You send the drones first to saturate the air defense system, forcing it to engage multiple small targets simultaneously. Then you launch the ballistic missiles. The missiles are not intended to be intercepted by the air defense systems protecting the installation itself, because those systems are busy tracking and engaging the drone swarm. They are intended to destroy the regional air defense assets that would otherwise be able to reinforce the installation's protection. This is called layered saturation attack doctrine. And executing it successfully against Israeli air defenses, widely considered among the most sophisticated in the world, represents a significant milestone in Iranian military capability. The third element is what I want to spend the most time on, because it is the most strategically significant, and because it directly involves the American intelligence team that went dark. Simultaneously with the drone and missile attacks, Iran executed what appears to be a precisely targeted special operations action against a covert team of American intelligence personnel. Let me explain what these people were doing. American intelligence maintains what are officially called liaison teams in various countries across the Middle East. Some of these teams operate under diplomatic cover, meaning they are formally declared to the host government and operate within a recognized framework. Other teams operate under what is called non-official cover, no embassy affiliation, no diplomatic immunity, no official acknowledgement. These teams typically operate in areas where official presence is either prohibited or would be strategically counterproductive. They gather intelligence. They maintain contact with local assets. They conduct what the intelligence community calls operational preparation of the environment, which means they are identifying targets, assessing infrastructure, mapping facilities, and building the intelligence picture that would support a potential military strike. The team that went dark last night was, based on every pattern available to serious analysts, conducting operational preparation of the environment for a potential strike on Iranian nuclear facilities. They were, in plain language, preparing the target list. Iran knew they were there, and Iran removed them from the board. Let me pause here because this point requires the full weight of your attention. When a nation-state directly eliminates a covert intelligence team from another nation-state, it is not a skirmish. It is not a border incident. It is not a provocation. It is an act of war. Not technically under the complex legal frameworks that governments use to avoid declaring conflict, but operationally in the real world where real people make decisions about real weapons. It is an act of war. And the country on the receiving end of that act faces a decision tree with very few branches. Let me walk you through America's decision tree right now, because this is where your future economic reality is going to be determined in the next 72 hours. Option 1. The United States acknowledges the loss publicly, demands accountability, and pursues a diplomatic and legal response through international bodies. This option will not happen. Here is why. Acknowledging the loss publicly requires acknowledging that the team existed, Acknowledging that the team existed requires explaining what they were doing. Explaining what they were doing exposes the operational preparation for a potential strike on Iran. Exposing that preparation changes the global political and legal calculus around any future strike in ways that severely limit American freedom of action. The United States will not take option 1. Option 2. The United States conducts a covert retaliatory action against Iranian intelligence assets, matching the action without escalating to a public military confrontation. This is the most likely immediate response. It keeps the conflict in the shadows where both sides can manage escalation and preserve strategic ambiguity. But it has a problem. Iran executed last night's operations precisely because they believe the United States is deterred from open military response by the costs Iran can impose. If America responds only with a covert action of equivalent scale, Iran receives confirmation of that deterrence calculation. And a confirmed deterrence calculation is an invitation to escalate further. Option 3. The United States responds with an overt military strike against identified Iranian intelligence infrastructure and the Iranian military units responsible for the operation. This option risks exactly the kind of escalation cycle that ends in a regional war. But it is the only option that directly challenges Iran's deterrence theory. And in the Trump administration, which has publicly committed to projecting strength and punishing adversaries who harm American personnel, option 3 has significant political support at the highest levels of decision-making. Here's what I want you to understand about this specific moment. These two events last night were not random. They were not opportunistic. They were coordinated. The strike on the Israeli airbase and the elimination of the American intelligence team happened simultaneously on the same night within hours of each other. That coordination requires planning at the highest levels of Iranian military and intelligence leadership. It requires intelligence on 2 separate classified operations in 2 separate countries. It requires a decision to execute both operations simultaneously, accepting the massive escalation risk that dual action creates. Iran made that decision. Iran executed that decision. And the message being sent is as deliberate as the operations themselves. The message is this: we know where your secret bases are. We know where your people are. We can reach both, and we are no longer waiting for you to strike us first. This is called a preemptive deterrence action in strategic doctrine. And it has never, in the modern era, been executed at this level of sophistication by a non-nuclear power against 2 nuclear-armed states simultaneously. This is historically unprecedented, and unprecedented events do not follow predictable response patterns. That unpredictability is the most dangerous element of everything happening right now. Let me now shift to Israel's position, because Israel's response to the strike on its classified installation will be the most consequential decision made by any government in the next 2 weeks. Israel operates under a strategic doctrine that its military calls the principle of disproportionate response. The doctrine is simple. When you attack Israel, Israel does not respond in kind. Israel responds in a way that makes any future attack unthinkable. This doctrine exists because of Israel's geographic and demographic reality. A country with Israel's population and territory cannot absorb repeated successful attacks. Every successful attack against Israel that goes unanswered creates strategic permission for the next attack. This is not political philosophy. It is strategic mathematics, which means Israel's response to last night's strike will not be proportionate. It will be designed to permanently change Iran's cost-benefit calculation about attacking Israeli military infrastructure. What might that look like? Let me give you the range of options Israeli military planners are currently working through. At the lower end of the response spectrum, Israel targets Iranian military infrastructure in Syria, which Iran uses extensively as a forward logistics and weapons transfer hub. Israel has been striking these targets regularly for years. An enhanced version of these strikes would send a message without dramatically escalating the overall conflict. At the middle of the response spectrum, Israel targets the Iranian military units and intelligence assets directly responsible for planning and executing last night's operations. This requires precise attribution, which Israeli intelligence is almost certainly already working to establish with maximum urgency. At the upper end of the response spectrum, Israel uses last night's Iranian action as the trigger event to execute the strike on Iran's nuclear facilities that has been planned, prepared, and rehearsed for over a decade. The logic would be simple and defensible. Iran has now demonstrated both the intent and the capability to target Israel's most sensitive military infrastructure. The window for preventing Iran from reaching nuclear capability is closing. The two conditions together create a strategic case for acting now. And here is the element that connects everything I have described in this analysis. That upper response option, an Israeli strike on Iranian nuclear facilities triggered by last night's events, is precisely what Iran may have intended to provoke. Not because Iran wants to be struck, but because Iran's military doctrine holds that the moment Israel strikes Iranian nuclear facilities, Iran is politically and strategically authorized to execute full-scale retaliation with every asset in its arsenal, every missile in its inventory, every proxy force in 6 countries, every drone swarm it has been accumulating. All of it unleashed simultaneously in the largest coordinated military operation in Middle East history. Iran may have calculated that provoking Israel into striking first gives Iran the moral and strategic cover to execute a retaliatory campaign that Iran could never initiate unprovoked without facing universal international condemnation. This is the chess move within the chess move, and understanding it is the difference between seeing events and understanding them. Let me now tell you what the next 72 hours look like across the dimensions that matter most. Militarily, Israel's air defenses are already at maximum readiness across all sectors. The Iron Dome, David's Sling, and Arrow systems have been activated at their highest operational posture. Israeli Air Force assets are repositioning and additional sorties are being generated to maintain continuous combat air patrol over sensitive geographic areas. American naval assets in the Eastern Mediterranean and Persian Gulf are receiving updated threat assessments and repositioning within those assessments. U.S. Air Force assets at regional bases are also being repositioned. All of this is happening without any public announcement, but the satellite imagery will show it. And the financial markets will react before the announcements come, financially. Within the next 72 hours, you will see specific movements in specific asset classes that are entirely predictable if you understand what is happening. Oil prices will rise. The question is how fast and how far. Any market participant who correctly reads the strategic situation has already begun positioning in energy assets. By the time this becomes mainstream news, the early positioning will already have captured the majority of the move. Gold will rise. Gold is the oldest fear trade in human financial history. When nation-states engage in direct military actions against each other's most sensitive assets, gold responds. Defense sector equities will rise. When military escalation occurs, defense companies receive new orders, new contracts, new political priority. The financial markets are not separate from geopolitics. They are a reflection of it. And right now, that reflection is showing something very serious. At the personal level, here's what I want every person watching this to do right now. Not tomorrow. Now. Verify the financial institutions you use have access to your funds in a scenario where electronic systems face disruption. This does not mean withdrawing everything from your bank. It means understanding your access options and having a modest cash reserve that is not dependent on electronic infrastructure. Review any energy-related costs in your household budget and understand the upper limit of what you can absorb. If your energy costs doubled for 60 days, what would that mean for your family's financial stability? If the answer is that it would create serious hardship, that is information you need to act on now rather than during the crisis. Consider what your income situation looks like if a significant geopolitical event disrupts the economic sector you work in. Supply chains, travel, financial services, technology. All of these sectors are vulnerable to geopolitical shocks in ways that most people do not recognize until they are already experiencing them. I want to share something personal with you now. In 32 years of studying geopolitical risk and its consequences for ordinary people, I have witnessed patterns that repeat with extraordinary consistency. The people who suffer most in every crisis are not the ones who lack the ability to prepare. They are the ones who lack the information to know that preparation was necessary. They were smart enough, they were capable enough, they had enough resources, but they did not know what was coming. And by the time they knew, the preparation window had closed. That is what this analysis is designed to prevent. You now know more about the strategic situation in the Middle East than 95% of the people on this planet. You now understand the chain of events that last night's operations have set in motion. You now have the information to make intelligent decisions about your financial positioning, your household resilience, and your understanding of what the next 3 to 6 months may bring. What you do with that information is your decision, but you cannot say you were not told. Let me close with this. History is not made by the powerful alone. History is shaped by whether ordinary people are paying attention. When enough ordinary people understand what is happening, they make better decisions. Better decisions create pressure on political leaders. Pressure on political leaders changes outcomes. You watching this analysis, sharing it, discussing it, thinking critically about it, are not passive consumers of events. You are participants in the information environment that shapes how these events unfold. The war for the Middle East is happening on battlefields. but it is also happening in information space, in the space where people either understand what is real or are confused by what is false. Understanding is power, and power, used wisely, protects the things that matter most. Your family, your community, your future. If this analysis gave you clarity, please give something back. Share this with one person who needs to understand what is happening. Leave a comment below with your assessment, your question, your concern, because the conversation this community generates is itself a form of intelligence. Subscribe for the next analysis, because what is coming in the next 30 days will require continuous monitoring and clear thinking. And if you know someone who is making financial decisions without understanding the geopolitical context those decisions exist within, send them this. Because a decision made without context is just a guess. And in the environment we are entering, guessing is a luxury nobody can afford. This is Professor Jiang. Stay informed, stay positioned, stay ahead.